Retiring on over $500,000 a year at the age of 50 is easier than you may think. You need 3 things. The first thing you need is time, ideally 20 years. The second thing you need is capital, either your own or someone else's. And the third thing you need is a good income. For this client, they have all 3. They're in their early 30s, they've got an existing portfolio, they've got an income of about $1 million a year from their investment banking role. And because of those 3 things, we actually blow that $500,000 passive income number out of the water. Let's break down their master plan. Now, before working with us, they already had a few properties under their belt. They had an owner-occupier home that they bought in 2017 for $1.85 million. They had 5 off-the-plan investment properties that they purchased between 2016 and 2023. So they already had a solid foundation. They had the equity. They just needed to put a supercharger behind it and start buying some higher dollar value assets that was going to get them a lot more capital growth over the next 20 years. That's exactly what we are doing. So in 2025, you can see there is 2 acquisitions at $2 million a piece. And in 2026, there are 2 more acquisitions at $1.75 million a piece, taking their total acquisitions over 2 years to $7.5 million plus their existing portfolio. The first thing I need to illustrate is that if we are targeting $500,000 of passive income in today's dollars, as inflation eats away at our money every single year, we will need more than $500,000 in the next 10 to 15 years to get the same buying power as $500,000 has today, which is something you must not forget when you are building a portfolio. You can see that their passive income as of today is negative $49,000 because they're holding properties that obviously aren't paying for themselves, which is completely normal and actually advantageous when you are earning really good incomes because you get the taxation benefits of the negative gearing. If we want to retire in the next 15 years, by the time we're 50 years old, that $500,000 of income today will actually need $725,000 of income in 2040 to get the same buying power, which essentially means our dollar is going to devalue by 50% between now and then because we'll need 50% more money to get the same buying power. What you also see just above it is we actually get them to $1.225 million, which is almost double what they need. Now, let me show you how we actually get there. In 2025, we make those 2 $2 million acquisitions, which then takes their total portfolio value to just under $11 million. As you can see, they're still sitting at a relatively low loan-to-value ratio because they've got $5.5 million worth of equity. They've also got almost $2 million in cash, which is sitting in the offset account against their owner-occupier property, which means they are only paying interest on about $3.5 million of debt. Hence the reason we're able to go so aggressive. Now, next year in 2026, we then make 2 more acquisitions at $1.75 million a piece. And with the growth on the existing portfolio, plus those 2 acquisitions, it takes our total portfolio to just over $15 million. And our debt now increases to $8.9 million, minus our cash sitting in offset, means we're paying interest on about $6.5 million worth of debt. So about a 50% loan to value ratio. We then don't acquire any more assets for 12 years and we simply just sit on the existing portfolio and start to decrease the debt over that 12-year period. We call this the incubation period, which is essentially where we just sit, let the marketplace grow, and we decrease our debt. You can see by the time we get to 2038, we've essentially decreased all of our debt and we're sitting on $32 million worth of assets. And we've got $3 million sitting in the offset account, of which is not offsetting any debt. So our total net position is $36 million, which isn't a bad position to sit in, but because all of our assets are residential, even at $32 million of net investment assets and $3 million of cash, now there's a chunk of that $32 million which is tied up in the owner-occupier asset, and there's probably about $25 million in investments. It's only producing $434,000 of net income, which works out to be about a 2% net yield on the portfolio. And the reason for that is because we've got $223,000 of running costs, which is things like property maintenance, property management fees, land tax, and all the upkeep, which when you're in residential real estate, you as the landlord have to pay, which is why when we move into the cash flow period of our life, which we call evolution, we don't want to hold residential assets anymore. We want to sell them down and convert them into commercial assets. So we go through this period called consolidation and evolution, which is where we sell down our residential assets, pay some capital gains tax, and then use all of the net gains that come out of the assets and we roll that into commercial property, which is exactly what we do with part of the portfolio. And the only part that we sell down in this scenario are the assets that we have purchased for the clients, and we leave the existing assets that they already had in their portfolio for them to make the decision on. That is when we buy this little asset down the bottom here for $13 million, which is our commercial asset. After we purchase that property and sell down the other residential assets, it takes our total market value to just under $45 million. We're carrying about $2.5 million of debt because we do take on a little bit of debt when we purchase this commercial asset. And the reason for that is because we're retiring at 50 and we still have a lot of time between 50 and 60 when we can access super. And our worst case scenario is we could pay off the debt with the super if we wanted to. But we don't need to do that because there's so much surplus cash flow coming off the portfolio once we make this purchase, which is exactly what you see here. We end up with $1.225 million of net income after expenses and a debt-free owner-occupier home. Then by 2042, we end up completely debt-free, which is 2 years after we retire. And the reason for that is because there's so much surplus cash coming off the portfolio that we're not spending, of which we're then using that to decrease the debt that we took on to buy the commercial asset. And that, my friends, is the exact way you build a portfolio, regardless if you want $1 million a year or you're on $150,000 a year. Generate capital, hold the portfolio, sell it down, and then roll all of your cash into commercial, of which will give you your income.